The following is brought to you by Bleacher Report. If you guys want to check out my live post-game reaction show, make sure to have the Bleacher Report app downloaded and ready to fire up right after the game. You'll find me in the Chargers section. Bolt up. Go to Bolt Fam. It's the director. Chargers fans, man, we needed this so bad. Somebody in my chat made the perfect comment during this game. At the time, he says, I need a touchdown for my mental health. I think all Chargers fans needed a win in this game for our mental health. My goodness, what a long stretch of depressing Chargers football. All of us feeling that pit in our stomach, just hoping that we can find a way to claw our way out of this hole that we've dug. And now finally the Chargers have shown signs of life, taking down the Miami Dolphins 29-27 in a game that, I'm going to be honest with you guys, man, I was pretty pessimistic going into this one. Not because I don't have faith in Justin Herbert or Jim Harbaugh or any of that stuff. There's so many aspects of this team that are not just exceptional, they're pretty elite. But the fact that the offensive line had gotten so bad to the point where we were very confident in the kind of performance we were going to see this week tells us that that position needs serious work. Even after this win, the Chargers must find some solutions across that offensive line. But I think that we just made a jump in our odds to actually execute something like that. A lot of Chargers fans maybe a little bit anxious, hoping that Joe Ortiz would do something. And recently he proved that he is willing to move the needle and fight for this particular season in trading for Adafay. That move told me that the Chargers are not giving up on that 3-0 start, that they still see themselves as contenders, and that they're going to try and buy themselves some time for playmakers like Joe Alton, Khalil Mack to make their return. Excuse me, I got to sneeze so bad. There we go. There we go. It just feels like that was such a huge indicator of the Chargers' willingness to keep this thing going a little bit longer, okay? And the reason that I'm bringing that up is because the Chargers now a 4-2 team, which just on paper and looking at it feels so much better than 3-3, right? Have maybe brought more inspiration to continue making these moves. The offensive line, even with Joe Alt coming back and hopefully Trey Pipkins as well, is going to need some depth moves at the very minimum, right? Just to protect anything that you can. And certainly in the interior, that couldn't hurt either after this victory. Running back has been something I've been hearing a lot about recently as well. It sounds like the Chargers may have been in contact with the Saints trying to get Alvin Kamara over to the Bolts. Ultimately, he decided to stay in New Orleans. But the fact of the matter is that the Chargers, with this win, have likely positioned themselves to continue fighting for their postseason hopes, which is still very, very high at this point. And the best opportunity they have to do so, in my opinion, is by making some moves. Free agency, sure, there's still some guys out there that I like. But for the most part, this win kind of saved our season in a lot of different ways. Our playoff projection and hopes are probably still pretty high thanks to this win. It saved us from maybe falling below the Broncos in a lot of different ways as well. A lot of different indicators as to why this game in particular was pretty important for the Chargers to figure out. And lo and behold, they figured it out. And that gives me a lot of hope that they can continue to figure it out as we go into the coming weeks, because we got a couple of pretty big games coming up. We got the Colts and the Vikings, which are both much more difficult opponents, in my opinion, than the Miami Dolphins, which we barely survived. There's hope, though. There's hope that the Chargers that continue to climb that ladder and find time for their stars to return, which, who knows, maybe Joe Alt next week, maybe it's during the Vikings game. Either way, finding that momentum and finding that time to buy for these guys to return, very, very important. So let's kind of get over to some of the ins and outs of this game. I think the stats actually tell quite a lot in terms of what we saw in this game. 29-27 would be your score. Let's start off with the man himself, Justin Herbert, who, despite all of the setbacks on that offensive line, had a pretty solid day. 264 yards, 2 touchdowns, only took the 1 sack, surprisingly, shockingly. He was under duress the whole game. Lots of pressures, I'm sure. But the fact that he was able to keep plays alive, there were several plays where it should have been a sack, and he gets the ball out at the last second, or, he scrambles and finds time for his receivers to get open. A lot of the success that we saw in offense this week was due to Justin Herbert's flexibility and ability to keep drives alive. Very impressive game by Justin Herbert today, and a good stat line to show us that he's still in it, even with an offensive line that is struggling. But probably the name to mention on offense this week, the guy that really broke out and gave us hope that we still have a run game, despite being short a Najee Harris and Omarion Hampton, who are both in IR. It was Kamani Vidal, who would carry the ball 18 times for 124 yards. My goodness, did we see a show out this week from Kamani Vidal, which honestly was another reason why my hope for the remainder of the season is remaining pretty good. Because running back is such a vital piece of this team. It sounds like Omarion Hampton may not be back for some time, and getting Vidal out there and showing us how good he can be brings a lot of hope back that our offense can stabilize at some point in the future. 124 yards is awesome, and he also was a huge factor in the passing game as well. Take a look over here. Kamani Vidal caught 3 balls for 14 yards and a touchdown he would score. Looks awesome, man. Kamani Vidal with what's that going to amount to? Like 138 yards and a score. We got ourselves a nice running back to go into the season with. I would still consider signing or trading for somebody just to make sure that depth is nice and padded. Of course, with the Chargers, running backs dropping like flies over the last couple of weeks, but Vidal looked like a great answer to those concerns that we had at the position, and hopefully he can continue that. And this is something I think a lot of us maybe saw coming after his performance. In particular, funny enough, in the Hall of Fame game, he kind of went nuts, and then, of course, he was buried on the depth chart behind, Omarion and Najee, and at one point he was sitting on our practice squad just because how much talent that we had at running back. Well, unfortunately, things went a certain way where he gets the start here in Week 6, and he gives me a little hope that we're going to be okay at the position for the next few weeks. I don't know when Omarion's coming back, but it feels like we're in better hands. Another guy to really put out there is Ladd McConkey, who saved the day on that huge play from Justin Herbert in the fourth quarter. By the way, shout out to Nyheim Hines, who was elevated from the practice squad, had not played in a regular season game since 2022. He positioned the Chargers for that comeback with a nice return, giving the Chargers a starting field position at the 40-yard line. And then, of course, just 20 yards later, you would be in range for a Cameron Dicker field goal. Luckily, Ladd McConkey gave us a really, really nice reception of 42 yards to position himself and the Chargers to run the clock out and get ourselves an easy chip shot for Cameron Dicker, who's another MVP of this game. Ladd McConkey, who has been kind of slow to start this season, is finally revving up. 7 receptions, 100 yards, and a touchdown. This is something, again, that we needed to see. And a shift in the Chargers' offense that really gave me hope that there's an ability to adjust somewhere. The offensive line isn't giving you much. Despite, winning the game, the offensive line was still very, very bad. I'm sure we're going to see some pretty bad grades tonight. But the fact that we were getting the ball out quickly to Ladd McConkey, to who our second receiver in this game would be Oronde Gadsden, the tight end, tells me that they're kind of figuring out how to move the football despite there being literally no time for Justin Herbert to let plays develop. But shout out to Ladd McConkey, the wide receiver 1 of this team. He had an absolutely fantastic day. But also shout out, and again, I'm not going to quite call it the breakout game, but it feels like we're going to start seeing a lot more of Oronde Gadsden as the weeks goes on. 7 receptions for 68 yards. It would have been more if he had not had a fumble earlier in the game. There was also a target to him in the red zone that was thrown a little bit, or in the end zone, that was thrown a little bit too high. The opportunity for Oronde Gadsden to get more involved feels like it's come, and it feels like he's capitalizing, and that the Chargers are really wanting to make him a featured part of this offense. Now considering that he has the second most receptions in this game, ahead of guys like Keenan Allen and Trey Harris, who had a pretty decent day today, too. Trey Harris had a couple of really clutch catches. So shout out to the rookies, Oronde Gadsden, Trey Harris, these guys. And R.J. Mickens, by the way, on defense, too, would also get involved a lot. Really good day for the rookies to get involved and find some success here versus the Dolphins. So great effort by the offense, even with the offensive line not looking great. Also, huge shout-out to our guy Cameron Dicker, dude. My goodness, what are we looking at now? 4 field goals, 2 extra points. 14 points total. Really feels like the Chargers could do no wrong when they rolled out Cameron Dicker for those 3-point tries. And even one of them, I think the first field goal, Cameron Dicker lined up, I think it was a 58-yard field goal that he hit with such accuracy and power that you had to believe that would have hit from the 65-yard line. We have ourselves a fantastic kicker. So shout out to Cameron Dicker, man. Even with that one kick that didn't count, it absolutely knocks my socks off to see just how effortless that long field goal looked for Cameron Dicker. All right, let's look into the defense now, which had a couple of really nice feel-good moments. Let's actually start to see with, what the Chargers allowed on defense. 27 points allowed is not great. There were a couple of broken plays. Outside of that, there was some pretty good stuff, though. Let's start off here. The Chargers would hold Tua to 205 yards, a touchdown, and 3 interceptions with 2 sacks. I think the biggest contributor to the stat line for the Chargers was the fact that we were getting so much pressure. And that is something, I'm going to be honest, that didn't feel like it existed for the most part in this season. We had that one big game from Thule, 4 sacks. He was starting to look like he was heating up. But outside of that, it didn't feel like we had much going on. Then the Chargers go out and trade for Adafay Owe. We start to see Tuli Tuipulotu rev up, and now the pressure's getting there. Now the sacks are starting to come in. Now the forced and pressured throws and mistakes are resulting, and the Chargers did a great job at capitalizing in on that this week. 3 interceptions, 2 sacks. 27 points is more than I would have liked to see from the Chargers defense. But that defensive line, that edge position, is really starting to move in the right direction, which is something I was really hoping to see in this game. Getting that going is a big part of this Jesse Minter defense that, can provide a stable cornerstone for the unit going forward. So very, very nice to see that. On the other side, though, the run defense has been steadily declining, in my opinion. The Chargers let loose at Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt last week. Of course, Cam Skattebo and Jackson Dart the week before that. And then this week it was Devon Achane. Now, in their defense, Achane is a very, very good running back. One that, by the way, the Chargers rumor were looking at maybe trading for, which let me know what you guys think about that. In this week, though, they did get a good sample size of how good he really is. He's a very fast running back. He was hitting the edge like crazy, very involved in the passing game, too. 128 yards and 2 touchdowns for Achane in this game. And then you would add another 22 yards through the air for Achane as well. That would put us to 150 yards, 2 touchdowns. Crazy, crazy day for Achane. And one that does put some eyeballs on that defensive line. Is everything okay? Are we needing to make some moves, some adjustments to our run defense, which started out pretty good, and then maybe since then fizzled out a little bit, okay? Receiving-wise, the Chargers, I'm going to say their biggest strength on defense has been their ability to lock down receivers. Their coverage has been awesome. Jalen Waddle did get away with a couple of nonsensical catches this week, however. There was one that was bobbled like 3 times before he finally brought it in. And then there was another one where I think he caught it on the sideline. I remember it being kind of crazy, too. So 2 crazy catches from Jalen Waddle. I mean, he's a great player. And maybe he got the best of Cam Hart in those plays. But outside of that, the Chargers really locked things down. It's Julian Hill, right? I think the backup tight end. He would be the second leading receiver with just 31 yards on 3 catches. Then you got Ingold for 22. And, of course, some of them are pretty big plays, like, Long's with 22, 14, 10. But not a lot of yardage outside of Jalen Waddle, which shows us that the coverage is still holding up pretty well. So shout out to Derwin James, Tarheeb Still, Dante Jackson had a pretty nice stop in that game as well. The secondary's been playing phenomenal. Elijah Molden, and again, like I mentioned at the top of the show too, R.J. Mickens, the rookie, also having, in my opinion, what looked like a really nice debut for him. And maybe one of the reasons why the Chargers were comfortable in trading away Alohi Gilman. R.J. Mickens was one of those guys that I was very high on at the tail end of the draft. I was very excited when we got a value pick on him. I think it was in the 6th or 7th round, right? Very exciting to see him added to the roster so late in the draft. And I think he flashed a lot in the preseason. He gets the start here in week 6, and he, I think, really showed us why he was such a steal in the draft, and maybe the reason why the Chargers were comfortable in dealing Alohi Gilman away to the Ravens recently. So shout out to all these DBs, man. They've looked great. And, of course, Derwin James with the interception. Very, very cool. So let's go to the defensive stats here for a second as well. Back to the Chargers, because I wanted to highlight one guy that I think is going to be very, very fun to watch for the rest of the season. I'm sure you guys know who I'm looking for. Shout out to Justin Boygby on special teams today too, by the way. Yes, I am highlighting Adafay Owe, who didn't take long to get on the scene with the Chargers and start causing some havoc, right? I think he logged that sack, his first of the season, by the way, in the first quarter, early in the first quarter, which was really, really cool, dudes. I remember I put out a lot of content on the Owe trade this week. I had a lot of shorts and a video covering what was going on there. And Owe, in my mind, was a huge steal. I love Alohi Gilman, but we had the talent there. Of course, Tony Jefferson this week also logged an interception. We just have so much talent at that position. It felt like we were able to deal Alohi Gilman way and still have some great players to fill in his spot, or a Gilman. And then getting Owe in return for that and just a 5th-round pick felt like such a big steal. Now, I'm going to say, love you, Ravens fans, okay? But I got a lot of pushback in the idea that he could be a good Los Angeles Charger. Maybe there was a lot of coping going on in terms of they didn't want to think about giving away a really good player for a 5th round and a safety. But the fact of the matter is, he's a good player. And if he's already looking this good in his first game and his first handful of snaps on the Chargers, just imagine what he's going to look like going into the rest of the year and the rest of his career. I would fully expect he's the kind of guy that's going to get an extension with the Chargers fairly soon. He could be that answer post Khalil Mack. He's only 26, 24. He's a young guy who's got a lot of years ahead of him. And to see that so soon was very encouraging to what the rest of his career may look like, and maybe providing that post-Khalil Mack answer to this team at edge. Him and Thule might be the future at edge for this team, and I was very encouraged to see him get off so quickly with the Chargers, because, man, that was such a fun series watching him disrupt Tua. There was one really cool play where I think it was Waddle or Achane. They got loose to the edge, and I thought for sure that was going to be a first down or a touchdown or whatever. And then here comes Owe out of nowhere. On the replay, I could hardly believe it. His speed is absolutely incredible, closing in and getting the stop there. So Owe, I feel like, is a very big steal for this team. I think he's just getting started. Sure, you can credit the Miami Dolphins' poor offensive line for maybe that sack and that performance. But you got to remember, this was Owe's like 4th day on the team, and he's still out here producing. That has to even out in some way. So congratulations to Adafay Owe. Welcome to the team. Very excited about the days and weeks to come with him playing edge opposite Tuli Tuipulotu. So finally, to kind of close out this live stream, man, a lot of implications in this game, a lot of things that may have saved our season from this game. Sure, it wasn't the cleanest win. Sure, there was a lot of ups and downs and heart attacks, along the way, but they got the win. They're 4-2, not 3-3, which sounds 4-2, which sounds okay. Yeah, all right, this is a playoff team, and that's going to influence some movement on this team. I'm almost certain of it. I think the Chargers have been very active again and looking for a running back. They've already gone out there and gotten their edge player. They're very serious, in my opinion, about protecting this season, and I think that this win likely positions them to continue doing that. There's still problems. Offensive line needs a lot of help. I don't know how many players you're going to find available for trade for that position, but you got to make something happen, right? Alt, hopefully on his way back. Hampton, hopefully eventually makes his return. But until then, it feels like this gave me hope that the Chargers can survive up until those points. So definitely very cool. Brings hope back to the Chargers fandom, brings joy back to Chargers fans who needed it so bad after the last few weeks, and brings some momentum finally back to this team now going into Week 7 versus the Indianapolis Colts. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been the Director on Bleacher Report. If you like this, hit us up with a follow here and like and sub and all the things. And we'll catch you next week versus the Colts in hopefully what is another game continuing this Chargers momentum that, again, was desperately needed. Bolt up, baby. Grab that dub. Celebrate. Go get those victory briskets. Y'all earned it, man. After the last couple of weeks, absolutely earned. Big love, Bolt fam.